This is Kanzenshuu, the podcast, episode 539 for the week of July 26th, 2026. Well, hello. Long time no see. Welcome to Kanzenshuu, the podcast, an extension of the all-encompassing Dragon Ball fan site, Kanzenshuu. We cover anything and everything Dragon Ball in hopes of enlightening and a little bit of entertaining here. Boy, it's been a minute, huh? If you don't recognize the voice in your ears right now, hey, hi. My name is Mike. You may see me around the internet as VegettoEX. I had one of them summer colds that kind of took out my throat and my voice and my nose for a while. So hopefully you subsisted on the guest appearance episodes that we had in the feed for a while there, following the charity stream that we had a couple months back here. It's been a busy summer at Kanzenshuu, even if there hasn't been a regularly numbered podcast episode in your feed. I am so psyched to be back with you today, though. I've got a slew of podcast stuff already planned and scheduled. It's good to be back in the swing of things. I'm actually recording an interview for what's probably the next episode tomorrow night. So, we're all good here. Good stuff. I mentioned that fundraiser, which is probably one of the last things you heard in a regularly numbered episode here at the show. We did that. We raised over $1,600. I am so psyched. Go check out the full archive of 5 hours is up. There's a highlights reel from that as well. And if you like what you saw there, every Saturday night over on our cart streaming, we're reading another sentence from the Dragon Ball Evolution Junior novelization. Tune in, or else you'll never know how the story ends. With that out of the way, let's get on into things. My name's Mike. I'm old. Thanks for having me. This is a perfect episode for someone like me. I love this stuff. I think it's important when you ask questions to old people. And as a fellow old person, I'm appreciative to be asked these questions. There's so much to be learned when so many people cycle in and out of fandom. If anyone's around for a while, they probably have some kind of wisdom. I may have a little bit of wisdom here and there to share with you. So I'm psyched to answer this question from Jim. Came into the inbox, and this is going to set the stage for a bunch of listener and supporter questions, because we had a slew that people, as part of the fundraiser, as part of the special tiers there, got to suggest some podcast topics. So some of those are coming in the very near future. But this came to our inbox from Jim. I'm going to read Jim's question here. Hey, Mike. Hey, that's me. I have a good question about the early Dragon Ball fan community. While I was watching Z in '99 on Cartoon Network, I only came in after the voice change, so I have no memories of watching the Canadian cast. My question is, how much was it known back then about the cast change? What were the fan discussions like? Do you personally have any memories? Boy, oh boy, Jim, do I have memories and stories from here. And that is going to set the stage for this here episode. I'm going to chat a little bit about this very special time period of 1998 heading into 1999. We've covered kind of before and after this critical point a lot on the show before, but we've never hung on this exact moment here mid-shift as things were wrapping up and about to change, but hadn't quite changed yet. So I did a bunch of soul searching and article archive searching. I went through magazines. I went through other stuff I had, old site updates, external sites. I got a lot of cool things to share with you. And it shuffled up some old memories as well. That's what's on tap for this episode. We're going to chat about this cool little time period in 1998. I'll talk about some new stuff that we have on the site and on the wiki and all the various things that we have. That's this episode. Let me take a quick little break here. We'll get on into that topic. Here we go. So Jim's got a good question about the transition from the Canadian cast to the in-house cast down in Texas. I always think it's worth setting the stage here. I'm really excited and proud to share with you. There's a new page on the wiki. We've been loving these chronology pages. Therese has set up a bunch of these for things like ongoing releases and episodes and manga, just like the listing of stuff in Japan over time. Zephyr put together that awesome, like, real life history that led to Dragon Ball chronology page. I kind of ran with and combined those ideas into what right now is called the Dragon Ball American Release Chronology. I'll probably change that title at some point, but it is a complete historical record, sources cited for everything, from effectively 1988, which is when Dragon Power, the American release of The Mystery of Shenlong, came out on the Nintendo Entertainment System, which is the first like real official Dragon Ball presence in America. I should say licensed official presence, all the way to the current day. And it's really funny because you see the ebb and flow of Funimation. Like, Funimation gets formed, takes off, gets bought by another company, Navarre, gets bought back by Fukunaga, gets bought by Sony, does the Crunchyroll merger eating thing. The branding goes away, but it's still Funimation wearing their skin. Like, you see all of that all together really concisely. I'm really proud of that page. I still have some work to do. I kind of like did the beginning and the end, and I've been working my way towards the middle here. But I think it's worth reminding folks, if you listen to this show, you probably know all this, reminding you of what the real history was and who the partners here were at this critical juncture. So we know in 1994, Funimation is formed as a company. We've got Gen Fukunaga and Cindy Brennan Fukunaga, who, in conjunction with Daniel Kokenhauer, seems like he sold his family feed mill business. They become the principal investors, creators, founders of this company. And through a connection with Fukunaga's uncle, Nagafumi Hori, at Toei Animation, this company, this new company born out of nowhere down in Texas, gets the license to one of the biggest franchises in the world, a little something called Dragon Ball, for American distribution. That's 1994. May 94 is when the company gets founded. The next year, and there's some stuff in the meantime here, obviously, setting the stage for this to take place. September 1995, in syndication on American television. Again, there's other stuff happening in the meantime here. Stuff like Nippon Golden Network broadcasting the show. Previously, Harmony Gold had done some work here, but we're chatting just Funimation here. September 1995, syndication, Dragon Ball episodes 1 through 13 air, and that's it. There's plans for more. You can read more about this over in the press archive. We've got their episode synopses all laid out through basically the end of the 21st Budokai that they never got to. For certain reasons, Funimation shifts instead for the next season in September 1996, all the way to Dragon Ball Z. So they skip from Dragon Ball 13 to Z1. At this time, they are in fact using Canadian voice cast. The voices used are kind of the same group of actors. Dragon Ball is produced at BLT. Dragon Ball Z is produced with Ocean, even though you have some crossover here. It's like different studios and partners doing the stuff here. For sake of clarity, as Jim did in the original email that spawned this episode, we'll just call this the Canadian voice cast. So they continue to use this cast for 2 seasons, 2 syndication broadcast seasons of Dragon Ball Z. 53 edited episodes are produced, plus a 3-part version of DBZ Movie 3. That takes us from September 1996 to May 1998 of that span of episodes. Here's what's going on during that time. Funimation's syndication broadcast partners, a company called Saban. Perhaps you've heard of Saban in conjunction with something like the Power Rangers. News about Saban exiting the syndication business entirely comes out in January 1998. We are still midway through the 2nd season of syndication in January 1998. That season won't end until May. The story that I cite and I pull here comes to us from Zentertainment. Studio Briefing reports Saban Entertainment has announced it will cease domestic syndication of its kids programming, including X-Men and Dragon Ball Z, at the end of their current seasons. Saban plans to concentrate on syndicating movies and other long-form programming. So here we are midway through that 2nd season, and we can only kind of piece together things we know and presume that kind of shape the whole story here, because it's just so long ago at this point. We don't necessarily have everyone on the record about things. What we do have on the record, though, is Barry Watson, who is one of the producers there at Funimation in the early days, definitely cited not loving going up to Canada to oversee the voice recording for things. So once we lose Saban as a syndication partner, and it's going to be known at this point that like, hey, your days are numbered. They're exiting the business, and as soon as this season's over, that's it for them. Like, what do you do? And this is where we hit that real critical juncture, right? So if we're in May of 1998 here, when season 2 is ending, that season ended the weekend of May 23rd. Now, remember, it was syndication, so sometimes it aired on Saturdays, sometimes it aired on Sundays, depending on where you lived. At this point, it's already known that Saban's exiting the business. That's something I have to admit to. I didn't really understand at this time back in 1998. Certainly something that I do understand now, but it's also really funny going back to contemporary conversations. I'm going to reference alt.fan.Dragon Ball a lot here. I'll explain that in a second. It's really funny going back and seeing it understood by more well-versed folks than me at that time, back then. But what's so funny is that's known, and as this airs, it's already rumored at this point that Cartoon Network wants/is getting the series. And I want to run through the timeline real quick, and we'll talk more about these. So I'll explain alt.fan.Dragon Ball if you don't know, and then we'll come back to some of these. But the timeline from post syndication to New Voices was so quick in retrospect. And at the time, it felt like an eternity. I guess that's because I was 16, and when you're 16, you don't have much life to reflect on. So everything feels much longer than it truly was. You know, I play Final Fantasy 14, and the next thing we have coming up is a raid series with Final Fantasy 7, and also a different raid series with Evangelion. And there's just a lot in my life that feels like it's taking me back to 1997, 1998. Very strange. So let's run through the timeline. We learned Saban's exiting the syndication business January 1998. Season 2 ends syndication May 1998. DBZ starts airing on Cartoon Network August 1998. That's only 3 months later that DBZ makes the move to Cartoon Network. Sleeping Princess Devil's Castle dubbed VHS released December 1998. Season 3 DBZ VHS tapes released May 1999. And then season 3 begins on TV, actually there on Toonami, September 1999. So we really only have, I would say, about a year and a half of like knowing what's happening to transition fully complete to broadcast and voices and new processes and everything here. It's kind of wild to think about back then. In the mix in here, it's so funny. News about Saban exiting the syndication business, January 1998. What also happened in January 1998? Oh yeah, I launched my website that month. That's so funny to think about. So you're going to hear me reference alt.fan.Dragon Ball. This episode is 13 years old now, crazily enough. But seemingly back in August 2013, Julian and I did a whole episode talking about alt.fan.Dragon Ball. It was a news group on Usenet. You can think of it in some ways like the ideal Fediverse that we're kind of like aiming for with social media these days. It was a decentralized bulletin board system, kind of layman's terms here, like using email-ish protocol. Not really, but just think of it that way. Just the ways that you would access it sometimes before the big AOL influx that I was a part of. Sorry, Usenet. It was the forum community before we had forum communities. There were different, almost like subreddits for all sorts of different topics that were all through this protocol through Usenet. Alt.fan.Dragon Ball was the place for Dragon Ball. There were some earlier conversations on things like rec.arts.anime and .mis, miscellaneous. But really once alt.fan.Dragon Ball formed, kind of like that was it. And we killed basically alt.fan.Dragon Ball when we launched our own forum. Sorry, but we kind of took everyone with us, and that's just the way it goes. So you'll hear me mention the news group there. That's where a lot of these conversations were happening in 1997, early 1998, onward into the voice shift. I think there's just so many funny coincidences, and you don't know where stuff is coming from. the earliest mention that I can find of Cartoon Network, like in quotes, Cartoon Network, searching on alt.fan.Dragon Ball, at least what remains of it, courtesy of Google Groups, is a thread that someone's posting for DBZ for the weekend of May 23rd, which is when the final 2 episodes of Syndication Broadcast Season 2 are airing. So that's going to like be the end of it. A couple posts in from Sir Stack, rumor, all quotes, has it, nothing more, that Cartoon Network may be interested in repeats of DB and DBZ. That's so funny because it's like, there's probably, just like you see these days with, whether it's like MCU speculation, there's just a lot of that going on with like the Doomsday stuff, has led to the trailer and, you know, all the general rumors and speculation and leaker culture and that kind of thing. There's a whole lot of like wishful thinking that goes into these kinds of things. There's also probably a lot of truth in there and stuff. The world is a lot smaller back then. And so things could happen, especially the way the internet was. Like, word could get out and would just make its way to the general public on news groups. And, you know, it might have a little bit of a game of telephone going on there. But if in May, we already know for a few months here that Saban's gone, Funimation, you know, got this license from my uncle at Toei. They got to do something with it. So are people just like, Cartoon Network's on the rise here? Are they just presuming, hoping, wishing that it's going to go to Cartoon Network? There does seem to be a lot of scuttlebutt about like, no, I've seen a confirmation. I saw a news story. You know, I saw this post over on this site. They say it's actually happening. Unfortunately, this is also kind of a real critical point for when we lose the record for some of these fan sites. Like, even I don't have the best archive of my own material from the earliest days here in 1998. I have zero record for Vegito EX's Ultimate DBZ links page from January 1998 because I made it in the AOL homepage builder. Like, I didn't have the actual HTML myself to archive, and I never did like a save as on the page or anything there. A lot of archive.org stuff is good. A lot of it's also missing. There are a lot of sites that have been blocked from being archived on there. So there's not a whole lot, which leaves us with the news group as kind of like the source of truth for what the conversation was back then. And that is why I feel very strongly about keeping our forum up. Our forum install dates back to 2004. Again, I hate that we're missing some critical years before then. Like, did the best I could though. We've kept it up. It's been, you know, over 20 years of the same forum install. Unfortunately, we lost some super episode threads, but that's a different thing. And that was a whole thing. For the most part, you know, we have a fairly complete record of, you know, the sentiment of the era. It's a selective sentiment because it's whoever is posting at the time, but this stuff is important to have a record of, and it's really fun to be able to refer back to it. So the thing that's going on with Cartoon Network here is also that Sailor Moon debuts in summer 1998 over on Toonami. And Sailor Moon had a really interesting journey through North America. Sailor Moon began in syndication as well. The final episodes of Sailor Moon are aired in Canada. They have their own lost episodes going on with the end of R. Sailor Moon was also airing on USA. Was it airing alongside the Street Fighter cartoon? The USA Action Extreme Team, was it part of that block? I feel like it was, before finding another home on Cartoon Network, and it really blew up there. And eventually they got the final episodes of R to air over there. And Z was not that far behind. DBZ coming at the very end of August in 1998. So when people are talking about Cartoon Network, even in spring 98 here, it really feels like there's blood in the water and everyone's like, I got to get this show. There's a larger conversation to have that I feel like I can't stress enough. People are like, yeah, DBZ failed and it wasn't a success until Toonami got it. It's demonstrably false. Dragon Ball Z got a 1 hour long block for its second season in syndication. This is an anime airing on American television before Pokemon. They got an hour long block. It was getting merchandise support as well. The reason that Cartoon Network wanted it was because it was such a success and a growing success. And yes, it took off larger from there because it got a chance to grow, and the after school time slot was certainly a help for it there. But we're talking about this time frame where DBZ is exploding in popularity, and that's due to the syndication broadcast that's going on here. So we've got all this conversation about Cartoon Network potentially picking it up. And we know it's going to air in repeats for the next year before new Z episodes come out in 1999. But Jim's question was about the voices change. We've been talking this long and we haven't gotten to voices changing yet. The thing is, voices don't change with Dragon Ball Z first. They change with the original Dragon Ball. I mentioned it going through that timeline earlier, but Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle, Funimation's title for Dragon Ball Movie 2, comes out English dubbed VHS December 15th, 1998. So we're still in 1998 here. We have transitioned from syndication broadcast to Toonami broadcast for Z, but rather than going directly into Z, Funimation does this little like stopgap. You could almost see it as like a trial production. Can we even pull this off? If we're going to record locally and reboot our production processes, can we do it? And they start with Dragon Ball Movie 2. That comes out in December 1998. There's a lot less conversation about the voices change here because it's America and because it's the original Dragon Ball. And by and large, folks don't give a shit about the original Dragon Ball. But that doesn't mean that no one's interested in keeping track of things. There was a name, it might tickle the back of a brain for other folks that are as old as me. Adrian, I think it's Saavedra. Adrian claimed to be in regular contact with someone at Funimation, and this contact at Funimation would go under the code name Agent Mai. Adrian and Agent Mai would share regular updates that were purported to be real information and updates from Funimation along the way here before Sleeping Princess and then leading up to the actual production of DBZ Season 3. Now, I say purported to be because it was the internet in 1998, and there's really no way for, a 16-year-old Mike to really do any journalistic inquiries into the accuracy of this. We all took Adrian at the word. When you read what's in these updates, these Q&As between Adrian and Agent Mai, and eventually I was able to pass some questions. Chris over at DBZ Uncensored was able to pass some questions to Agent Mai. We regularly shared some of these updates on our sites and different news updates and editorials and things. The information in retrospect seems really solid. It's also, if you were probably a little bit older and learned in the ways of what was going on, you probably could have come up with this stuff on your own and been fairly spot on. But there were the occasional things that's like, that's really inside baseball. And I take it to be true. I still take it to be true. I like to think it was. The reason I bring this up is one of Adrian's earlier chats with the Agent Mai here gets into this era pre-Sleeping Princess. So this is a post from November 1998. So DBZ has moved to Cartoon Network, but Sleeping Princess isn't out yet. Adrian's question for Agent Mai here. I saw that the new Dragon Ball movie is set to be released. Is this true? Is Kidmark the one releasing it? Will it be uncut? Are the same actors from the original Dragon Ball used in this one? And this is the response from Agent Mai here. The new Dragon Ball movie is Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle, and we are releasing it ourselves. It will be uncut and uncensored. We are trying to create our own sound studio here, so the voices will not be the same as the original series. We auditioned new actors. That's kind of like our first real understanding of what was happening here. I mean, if you were maybe a little older, thought a little more carefully and critically about this stuff, you could have pieced this all together. I say that with regard to some of Agent Mai's other answers here, where they specifically call out like working with Seagull Entertainment for a distributor early on. That makes sense. You could know that from other things, but like we weren't that we didn't really understand those relationships that well. I say for folks of kind of like my era of the second generation of fan size, we're just a little too new to really understand the partners like we would later. So the movie comes out at the end of 1998. Of course, Funimation's distributing it themselves. It takes a while for it to get out there. I'm going to read a review from January 1999 that gets posted on alt.fan.dragonball. This was old Usenet buddy Ben Bigwig. There are some names that I will always remember. Rest in peace, Jim. I think about Ben. I think about Valerie. Like all these names that were out there that were just always there. And I wonder where they are. And I hope they're all doing well these days. So I'm just going to read Ben's review kind of verbatim here. I just got finished watching the Funimation dub uncensored version of Sleeping Princess in Devil's Castle, and I thought I'd post a few remarks of it. First of all, it was completely uncensored. Kami-sen drools and gets nosebleeds from staring at women and makes disgusting little grunting noises looking at porno mags. Goku is naked as a jaybird after going Ozaru, etc., and the music is unchanged as well. Another important aspect is that every single voice actor was changed. Kami-sen has had so many voice actors by now, I don't think I would even be able to notice it was the same one as any other, but the others were all distinctly different. Goku's was just fine. Saffron Henderson, for those who didn't know, also played young Goku, has never bothered me, and neither did this voice. Krillin was okay, but the funny thing was that this chibi Krillin voice was deeper than Terry Clayson's voice. I did not like the others' voices, but maybe that's just because I'm used to the usual ones. What worries me is that since this is a Funimation production, I'm concerned that the original voice actors may not return if new episodes are ordered. Blah, 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 plot. Had a lot of fun. Villain. There's more chat about the actual movie itself. This is kind of one of the first real, like, our community talking about and responding to the new voices from Texas here. And of course, I think it's worth noting at this point that it's not Stephanie Nadolny that we have at this point. Is it Saley? I never quite remember the spelling of the pronunciations. I'm looking at it. I've looked at this name so many times. I'm not convinced I've ever pronounced this name out loud before. Let's say Saley. Saley did Goku for Sleeping Princess and then also Dragon Ball Movie 3, Mystical Adventure. That gets into something we've been sharing on the site recently is these From the Past Friday columns that I've been doing. Did a series of them years ago. I resurrected this column series. This gets a little ahead. Z has already come at this point, and they're going back to the original Dragon Ball. When Funimation goes back to Dragon Ball, they hold a series of fan vote polls. They do multiple voices for fans to choose for Pilaf, Shu, Xiao, and Goku. And they use Saley as well as Stephanie Nadolny as two voices to choose from Goku. Obviously, it ended up going to Stephanie Nadolny there, and that voice has gone through its own trials and tribulations over the years since then. Really interesting to think about that at this point in December 1998, going into January 1999. Stuff isn't set in stone yet. This is still the earliest days of the earliest auditions of getting this one product out the door before we turn back around to Dragon Ball Z. So from this point, we kind of regularly have columns, Q&As with Adrian and Agent Mai on various websites. We get to February 1999, and Adrian just flat out asks, will the same voice actors from the previous episodes be used, or will new voice actors be used? Please don't say there's going to be a new Vegeta. And Agent Mai responds, all the characters will be recast. We are doing the voices in-house now. Episodes 1 through 53 were recorded in Canada. The first project we tried this on was the DB Sleeping Princess movie. This is, for all of us at this time, like, oh, okay, yeah, like this is really, really happening. And it's funny, in February 1999 here, we're only a couple months out from those tapes actually coming out and continuing onward here. Again, the timeline was so compact back then, and it just felt like an eternity back when we were younger then. But it was so tight of a timeline here. And we get into March and April, there's more questions, and we start getting into more about, hey, what's the actual timeline? Tapes are coming out. I think a lot of folks don't remember that we did get some VHS tape releases of season 3 before it aired on Toonami. And at this point, we've kind of hit, the end of that and the beginning of the next time period, which is the voice cast has been chosen and actually has new ongoing serialized products on the shelf and coming to television. And we've recorded that podcast already. I mentioned this to Jim, but if you go back to 2019, for the 20th anniversary, Mary and I dug out the Captain Ginyu Assault tape. We watched the DVD, but I dug out the tapes too. And we watched those. Those are the tapes as they came out in spring 1999 there. And that's not what you hear on any modern home video release anymore. It's really been Frankensteined up. Yes, I know the monster is not you understand what I'm going for here. Between the redubs and some of the music changes and alignments, and then when you consider you can swap the audio track to the original audio, like what you can play now is not what was on those tapes as they came out back then. But that's kind of a different discussion, right? Like at that point, we've gotten the new voices and now it's time to analyze them, criticize them, do what you will with them. I really encourage you to go back to, that was episode 474 of the podcast back in July 2019. I don't remember it. You know, I did this recently with my movie 6 review for my guest appearance over on We Got a Podcast, where I went back to my review from my website, from Vegito EX's homepage, and read it the one time, and now it's gone from my memory. I did it back then for 474. On that episode, I read my review from when I was in high school, from when those tapes came out, as I wrote it on my website. I haven't reread it since 2019, and I probably will not read it again. I encourage you to go back and listen to what I said then for a real contemporary window into Mike's soul back then. But Jim's question, again, going back to the original question, Jim's question is really about, oh my gosh, when you learned about the voice change, like what were the conversations at that time? And I think you saw a little bit there in Adrian's questions for Agent Mai was, please don't tell me there's going to be a new Vegeta voice. Brian Drummond's Vegeta was a polarizing voice when it came out, and that might be astonishing to hear to younger folks, and maybe even to folks who came in at the time and didn't know. Brian Drummond's Vegeta was not liked by the old guard. Those who were watching in Japanese did not like Brian Drummond's performance of Vegeta, which is crazy because it's widely regarded these days as a fairly incredible performance, at least for those first 2 seasons. I can't speak to the later alternate English dub of the show under different direction. Say what you will about the over 9,000 moment, but You Won't Escape My Wrath is also a meme. I really can't call it a meme because the way that is held up with the kind of regard that it gets kind of transcends and eclipses most other English dub performances for the entire fucking franchise, right? Like that delivery of that moment, matching the animation there, 11 out of 10, no notes, right? So it's really funny to think about the old guard, which is funny for me to say, not loving the Drummond performance, but basically everyone else being like, oh my God, don't recast this person. This is incredible. It reminds me a lot of my contemporaries and there being no one who liked the Falconer Productions musical score. And then 10 years later, when all the other kids came online saying they liked it, we were wildly confused, to say the least. There was a lot of that going on. You know, there were a lot of critiques for the Canadian cast, but some of the choices in there, especially as we got to the tail end, unfortunately, we did have a lot of voice changes along the way, even in that small period of time, whether it was from Ian Corletta, Peter Kalamis. Peter's performances, I mean, everyone will shout out his performance in Dragon Ball Z Movie 2, World's Strongest, the Kaioken. I mean, if I don't mention it here, I'm going to have at least 5 people message me and say, hey, you forgot. I didn't forget. I assure you I didn't forget that performance there. Peter really stepped into that role in a way that I think was really hard to do following Ian Corlett. And by the end, found his footing for that character of Goku. I've always been a really strong proponent of Saffron Henderson. I think there's a warmth and an earnest quality to Saffron Henderson's performance of, yes, Goku, but especially Gohan, that has never been recaptured in the English dub. And say what you will about where the voice performance went and what it turned into as it had to be mimicked going forward. But Pauline Newstone was the one who set the stage for early English dubbed Frieza. Rest in peace again, just a few years ago, sadly there. This cast, I mean, they were the ones setting the precedent for a lot of stuff here. And a lot of cruft that we still have. You know, how much of that was in the performance, how much of that was in the direction and the script writing. It's probably equal parts here and there across the board, right? So when we learned that there were voices changing, you know, there was a lot of terror, maybe isn't the right word, and there was a lot of kyofu going around. There was concern. There was also a lot of, well, I'm just done with it then. And that was either the show itself or, like me, you were just going over to the Japanese version of the show by that point. Fan subs were getting more and more available and accessible, whether that was through traditional fan sub distribution means or things like flea markets, lots of other shops. Shout out to the basement of the Elizabeth Center, Canal Street. We're also starting to see the earliest days of digital replication of whole episodes making their way online. Full eps, quote unquote, full eps was a thing and a going concern of this era. A lot of sites just pulling in tons of ad revenue for posting entire episodes. And sure, it was a real media file that ran at 2 frames per second and was 160 by 120. But gosh darn it, that was how you were going to watch the entirety of Dragon Ball Z. And again, just thinking about that compressed timeline, it's only not even a couple years later, in mid-2000, when Funimation starts releasing their own uncut bilingual DVDs with translations by one of our own, Steve Simmons. You know, it's not that long if you want to keep going the official route that the Japanese version starts making its way to you. Officially, go down to the mall and pick up subtitled Dragon Ball Z. That starts to become a reality. We also have in 1998, this is another thing that's happening simultaneously alongside all this. Beginning of 1998, Viz starts releasing the Dragon Ball manga. And they're not beholden to Funimation's name choices and censoring decisions. It's a much more faithful way to consume Dragon Ball at this time. And they make a point of telling you that fact. That's a marketing bullet point for them, that it is a better way to consume Dragon Ball than Funimation's English dub of that era. So we have all this going on in such a short period of time that while there's definitely concern about the voice actor shift and it's not received well, let me tell you, as someone who was there, we didn't like it. There's a lot of hate watching going on. I'll certainly cop to that. I was young and had infinite free time. I could do it. It was a different time, but it was also a really magical time with so much happening at that time that was really shifting. Like when I think about was I still getting new stuff, quote unquote, new stuff? Was I still getting any fan subs by the time I got an official DVD from Funimation with the subtitle version in 2000? I must have, right? Because was I only getting fan subs for 2.5 years? I know when I started getting my first tapes, I got my first tapes in 1997 and made my first order in 1998. When I think about how many tapes I got, how many we continued to get, and people were still fan subbing the series even after Funimation made the move in-house, as there was still stuff Funimation hadn't gotten to yet. Things like GT, never mind the original Dragon Ball. Like there was an overlap between fan subs and official DVD releases. So it was possible to loathe the new voices, be concerned about this shift, while also being able to just like turn to the side and go over here and just live in your own world at the same time. But it was also kind of impossible to ignore because of how big Dragon Ball was becoming and how much more accessible an after school time block was and VHS tapes down at Suncoast were compared to getting fan subs. I kind of want to just stick with that. And this is one of my favorite threads. I mentioned this name, Valerie. Valerie, if you're out there, hope you're doing well. I think it's in response to the Adrian and Agent Mai thing. Valerie said, just read an interview. All the voices will be recast in the new episodes. Oh my God, pants heavily. Someone bring Mimi an inhaler. I mean, I just love the dramatic postings back on Usenet back here. I'm just going to scroll through and read some of the other threads here. To that point, yep, I'm annoyed from Gene here. Brian Drummond will be sorely missed as Vegeta. And heck, except for Frieza, I'm happy with the other dub voices too. It'll take a few episodes to get used to them, and Kami help them if they miscast Veggie. I think this one's funny. From Dende12345, hopefully he'll at least make an effort to sound like Brian Drummond. I don't do a bad imitation myself. Then again, it may sound stupid if he couldn't do it well. It's so funny to think about Sabat's early Drummond impressions of that time. And again, I say often, to an earlier point, what you get on DVD and Blu-ray today is not the performance of Sabat's Vegeta that came on that Captain Ginyu Assault VHS tape and as it first aired on Toonami there. So, Jim, and everyone who's listening, I hope that was an interesting journey through, again, such a short, compact timeline from learning Saban's exiting the business in January 1998 to the season ending in May, to moving to Cartoon Network in August, to a new tape with voices coming out in December. All the same year. One single year beginning to end there is like news to execution. Execution there takes on a couple different meanings, I guess. It's so funny to think about, especially like modern day Kanzenshuu project timeline. Like, yeah, we'll spend 13 years working on something, like not raise an eyebrow at that. Back then, a year was a lifetime to us. So please continue to ask old people like me questions. Happy to share my knowledge, my wisdom, and my experiences with you. Jim, I hope you got everything you wanted to out of this. Again, I will recommend people. This is effectively a prequel episode to that other one I mentioned, podcast episode 474 back in 2019. So now we've brought you up to the point where those tapes come out. Go listen to us talk about our 20-year retrospective on those tapes as they were actually released. Thank you, everyone, for indulging me in this journey here. Before we wrap up the show, I guess I just want to run through some of the cool stuff we got going on. You know, I mentioned my voice was gone for a while there, and I kind of poured my energy into typing. You know, there's still words from Mike about Dragon Ball out there. That's been in the form of lots of wiki work, but also I mentioned it earlier, the From the Past Friday articles. I've had a lot of fun with these over the last few weeks. I'm hoping to continue them for at least a little while longer. A couple last few ideas that I want to kick out there before maybe it goes to sleep for another 13 years. 13 is really the magic number around here lately, it feels like. Mentioned the voice sample ones. I did dig up the Goku voice samples so you can listen to those as they were put up and kind of see the timeline for that as well. I shared the Infograms Company Anthem theme song again. Oh, that one's a great one because there's still one game title or mention in there that I can't quite make out. And even our Discord community from Patreon couldn't quite nail down what we think it is there. We had a thought, but it feels like it doesn't quite line up. So check that out. The most recent From the Past Friday, again, posting every Friday, if you can't tell from the title, is actually the handwritten notes from our first podcast episode all the way back in 2005. Maybe you've seen them in the past on social media, but I dug those back up and shared those. It's really funny to look at like potential podcast topics, interviews, ideas. One of them was like pronounce Tenkaichi Budokai. I think we did that the very next episode. It's like interviews, Castor, Steve, and we got them all over time. There's been a ton of work going on in the wiki as well. I've been doing just whatever's interesting to me. I really feel strongly about the expanded world of Toriyama manga and kind of like sequel spin-off manga. So most recently, that's been the 1997 Dr. Slump reboot manga. Yes, did you know that there was a sequel manga, The Brief Return of Dr. Slump, and there was a reboot manga in 1997 that went alongside with the reboot TV series? We had a Dr. Slump manga by Toriyama. We had a Dr. Slump manga drawn by Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru. We had a Dr. Slump manga drawn by Tadayoshi Yamamuro. Did you know that? Maybe you did. I don't know. You listen to Kanzenshuu. You might have known that. Go check out and learn more about that. What other stuff did? Oh yeah, just the other day, the pseudo Super Saiyan page. That new Sparking Zero trailer really lit a fire under my ass about that form for some reason. It's like, I know everything about this. I literally have every written citation about this. I could put this page together in a day. And so I did. As the wise Peter once said. Kev's been doing great work over on the Sparking Zero page itself, just keeping track of like all the DLC and announcements and what's a costume and an actual character, all that kind of stuff. Every Sunday, we're posting a weekend wiki wrap-up article on the homepage of the site as well. So if you don't want to spy on us on the recent changes page, give you a nice little breakdown, just hey, cool things that have been worked on that are worth checking out. I think that'll do it. Thank you, everyone, for indulging me with a trip down memory lane, as it seems we do often here at Kanzenshuu, the podcast, which you can find at www.kanzenshuu.com. That is kanzenshuu.com. I think I said everything there is to say. Check out the main site. You're already listening to the podcast. Check out the wiki. Check out the forum. Twitch.tv/VegettoEX and or grabyournearest.com most Saturday nights. Cool thing about this one is as you're listening to it, we just had one and we're still on schedule for this coming weekend as well. So be sure to tune in. Have we shifted to exclusively playing Sonic Cross Worlds? I don't know. No, maybe we'll keep switching among games. It's interesting to play some other kart games though. I would be remiss not to mention patreon.com/Kanzenshuu. If you like what you read, if you like what you hear, you want to help keep the lights on every month, wouldn't be the worst decision in the world. I would appreciate it, and all the other dudes would appreciate it as well. I think that's it. Stay tuned for more research, more topics. I gotta finish reading the book so I can do an interview tomorrow. I'll see you out there. Thank you, everyone. How do I end a podcast episode? I guess I just did.